So Talia and I have been following the stream in contemporary art for a few years, and we wanted this. The evening came out of wanting to contextualize Oliver Larich's show, but we had a hard time positioning it within the discourse here in Israel, and we also wanted to introduce some younger artists to all of you and to talk about the theoretical and practical practices that have shaped this kind of work. So we organized this evening, and we're very happy to welcome you tonight. The terms post-internet and new aesthetics are used to describe artwork that, very broadly speaking, engage with the presence of the internet and the highly networked environment that we live in. Post-internet refers not so much to after the internet, so not after the existence of the internet, but after the fact that the internet exists, and we're all living in an internet state of mind, so to speak. So not so much after the hype of the internet, but when it's no longer new and special and cool, it's just part of everyday life. The development of technologies like Photoshop, CGI, which means computer-generated imagery, and live simulation enabled new aesthetic possibilities for such forms of reimagination. So just as in the 20th century, modernism was in large part defined by the relationship between craft and the emergent technologies of manufacturing, mass media, and lens-based imagery during the Industrial Revolution, the most pressing condition today underlying contemporary culture, I would argue, is the omnipresence of the internet. Or another example might be like the late 80s and early 90s in Israel, and the development of the mass media, coupled with the availability of personal video technologies that shaped the emergence of video art here in Israel. The term post-internet was coined by American artist and media theorist Marissa Olson in 2010, and was subsequently adopted by writer Jean McHugh, who began a blog called Post-Internet. And the term new aesthetic was coined by London-based artist and writer James Bridle in 2012. And a kind of third, less popular term is internet-aware art that was developed in LA by an artist named Guthrie Lonergan. So all these terms actually mean basically the same thing. They refer to work that assumes the centrality of the network, including everything from its physical components and infrastructure to its social and economic effects. It's not new that artists are engaging with the technology that make up contemporary life, but there's a need to distinguish this kind of work from what's generally called new media. So new media broadly refers to digital art, or engages in what's specifically digital, but today everything is digital. While new media, or any of its subsets like net art, looked at the ability to create digital images or projects, new aesthetics, or post-internet art, is more about the infinite reproducibility and mutability of the digital material. It's not so interesting to just look at technology or engage with the many manifestations of it, but this new aesthetics or post-internet art seems more engaged with both the aesthetics of contemporary life and the mind frame or social infrastructure and the social ramifications of a networked world. They're really looking at the increasing appearance of the visual language of digital technology and the internet in the physical world, and the blending of virtual and physical with a focus on the invisible things that are inseparable from the images and objects in today's world, and without which they would not exist. How do you talk about how the internet as something that both connects and separates us from one another, or how it shapes the way we think of ourselves and behave? How do you give form to or represent a system of distribution, and beyond that, to the world that created that system of distribution? While new media was somehow separate from contemporary art, this new stream of art is very much a part of the contemporary art world, especially the art market. It's not internet art, i.e. it's not projects or exhibitions that are meant to be viewed online, but rather is integrated into the various discourses and markets of art. For this reason, the term post-internet is absolutely reviled. Most artists don't want to be labeled post-internet, It's a very problematic term for many reasons, and they're adamantly against it because it sets them apart from the mainstream art world and kind of pigeonholes their work into a passing fad. The world of net art or new media was talking about technology in the early millennium that has since disappeared. It's Web 2.0 now, and a new world, and if they're going to join the gang of post-internet artists, their work will be obsolete within a few years. This anxiety is itself a talisman of the age we live in, one of hyper-historicization and the self-awareness with which we consume everything, even ideas. So one example, of course, is Oliver Larick's work, which is in the exhibition downstairs. If you haven't seen it, you're very welcome to. Uniman columns, the 3D printed columns, are actually scans that are available on his website, and the work itself is making those scans available for anyone in the world to download and print and augment and make their own. Just like the videos are also available, or one of them is on his website. So they're also at the same time virtual projects, but physical projects at the same time, which are, the physical part at least, are very much part of the art market, and they feed one another. It's about the lack of representational fixity and the lack of reverence for the original. Everything is original, even like copies and rip-offs from China. The source is no better or worse than its many copies, and what better aids the production and dissemination of copies than the internet? There's some room over here if you are looking for a seat. So these artists are asking how we have changed as a society, as a species. We're living in the age of the selfie. We are products and consumers at the same time. We reveal ourselves online. We submit voluntarily to be surveilled under a super-networked, looming contemporary gaze. We are our own public avatars. We have access to tools that can connect us to virtually all human knowledge, yet we mostly watch cat videos and pornography on it, and share confessions on the blogosphere about who we are and how we got that way. So what does this mean for art production, and more broadly, for representation itself? We no longer need to visit museums or archives to look at a single physical object. We Google search it and find hundreds of images or copies of it, and participate in the image production by making our own and publishing our own versions of it. Many of the artists that I'm talking about are privilege this state of excess by maintaining equal status across various materials, forms, and contexts. Object is image, image is object, and the original copy is somewhat irrelevant. This is a moment now of images, perhaps a return to images after the long reign of text embraced since conceptualism, because images have the ability to complicate human expressions and acts as a foil to the internet's primary focus on language, which often oversimplifies human action and thought. What's amazing about this moment and this technology is how it's collectively produced and received. Artie Virkant, one of the very few artists who self-identifies as and embraces the term post-internet to describe his own practice, talks about the democratically accessible DIY structure of the internet, which has not fully been absorbed as evidenced by the way we talk about them, colloquially, how we talk about the internet. They should make a new website, they should make a meme out of this, rather than discussing the internet with all its inclusive structure in mind and replacing they with we. This type of speech acknowledges the hierarchies and power systems we know to exist within the internet structure and leads to interest in the corporations behind it. That's why you see so much corporate branding developed by some of these artists. Artists working in post-internet style are young enough to have grown up using the internet and have never known a life without it. Yet they've observed the changes in speed, structure, use, and audience reception that have taken place within it, and respond to such developments with the knowledge that they have occurred as a result of developing hierarchies, increased corporate ownership, the collection of data for marketing purposes, the understanding that the internet may be less free than what it once was. We should also note that post-internet art is in some ways a privileged form of art making, because a large portion of the world still does not have access to the internet. This privileged space is also a double-edged sword. While it leads to a host of opportunities, it comes with its own threat. We are making ourselves easier and easier to be surveilled. So with all of this in mind, we want to briefly introduce the 5 works that are going to be screened tonight. The running time is about 1 hour, and Talia Heiman is going to introduce the works.
So up here you can see the 5 works that we're going to screen, the years they were made, and how long they'll be. You'll note that the first one's a little bit lengthy, but it's very, very beautiful, and we hope that you'll enjoy all of them. The first one, Cecile Evans, Hyperlinks or It Didn't Happen. In this piece, Evans takes 3 central virtual figures as her starting point. They are an avatar of a character which was originally conceived after the likeness of a recently deceased actor, an invisible older woman, and the Japanese holographic pop star Hatsune Miku. Evans is interested in these immaterial characters because they question what happens to our own digital avatars, our blogs, our Facebook profile pictures, once we ourselves have died, once we ourselves no longer physically exist. Along the way, she reflects on the years of commitment and the real emotional input devoted to our online lives, further suggesting that while humans need technological advancements, technology needs us too. We're then going to switch to Katie Torn's video, Breathe Deep. In this experimental animation work, Katie depicts a future landscape of leisure occupied by a central female figure. Barbie dolls, My Little Pony, and other 80s and 90s children's toys surround this woman, whose own Barbie-like mask frames her as the target of commercial advertising, marketing, and data collection, like Chen just spoke about. Though this woman may be weighed down, in fact obscured by these objects, she nurtures them at the same time, expressing a glimpse of humanity amidst overwhelming materiality. We're then going to switch to Adam Kaplan and Boaz Levin's video Last Person Shooter. These are 2 Israeli artists who are currently based in Berlin and are studying with Curator, who's a big writer in this field. So they, in this video, employ video game aesthetics. Kaplan and Levin begin by analyzing the way images of conflict are reported and circulated across different social media platforms. Last Person Shooter connects the developments in surveillance technology with that of video games. In the attempt to make video games a leisure activity in which really no real harm is done, no one really dies, no one really gets hurt, in this leisure activity, the designers, in an effort to make these games seem real, they actually trivialize the conflicts that inspired them. We're then going to switch to Jon Rafman, whose work Still Life, Beta Male, and his practice at large actually deals with the porous boundaries between our online presence and offline presence. Rather than depicting the alpha male, this character who dominates in physical reality, Beta Male imagines a new identity that he's created called the Beta Male, a character who earns dominance only in virtual reality, in fact. For the video, Rafman located media from Chen, which is a sort of black market website hidden in the deep web, capital D, capital W. It's like a huge interlocked concept that's very hard for regular people like myself to navigate. In this space, the most extreme and obscure sexual fetishes, access to those kinds of videos can be found, as well as it also leads to other portals of intense criminality that can be accessed through the deep web, drug markets and things like that. We're going to end with Andrew Norman Wilson's Uncertainty Seminars, which examines motivational tools ranging from self-help videos to these really cheesy posters that line school hallways. And he, in this video, he looks at these tools as a way of inspiring innovation and increasing human productivity. His approach to corporate aesthetics, he employs corporate aesthetics to emphasize the stress of capitalism, using images of PowerPoint slides. He develops a narrative about Sigmund Freud's relationship to his pet dogs, and in doing so, he considers psychoanalysis as an innovation in itself, one that brings the individual and the self to be more useful to society. And on that note, we'll begin. I'll turn the lights off. Hope you enjoyed it. Okay. Chen and I really love these works, so I hope you guys do too.